The alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 in the morning, just like it had every day for the past 3 years. Rosa quickly turned it off before it could wake her 12-year-old daughter sleeping in the bed next to hers. But little Anna was already awake, staring at the ceiling of their tiny one-bedroom apartment. "Come on, sweetheart," Rosa whispered, getting dressed in the dark. "We need to leave in 10 minutes. Anna rubbed her eyes and pulled on the same jeans and hoodie she had worn yesterday. There was no time for breakfast, just a quick splash of water on her face and they were out the door. The city was still dark and quiet as they walked the 6 blocks to the grand music hall where Rosa worked as a cleaner. This had become their routine during school breaks and weekends. Rosa couldn't afford a babysitter, and leaving Anna alone in their neighborhood wasn't safe, so Anna became her shadow, a quiet little girl who learned to be invisible while her mother worked. The music hall was a beautiful old building with tall marble columns and golden details that sparkled when the lights came on. Anna loved walking through those big wooden doors every morning. Inside, everything smelled like old wood and fresh flowers. The ceilings were so high that Anna had to crane her neck all the way back to see them. But the most amazing thing in the whole building was the piano. It sat right in the middle of the main stage, a massive black instrument that looked like it. Cost more than everything Anna and her mother owned put together. The piano was a Steinway, though Anna didn't know what that meant. She just knew it was special because everyone who played it treated it like it was made of glass. "Remember the rules," Rosa would say every morning as they entered the building. "Stay quiet, stay out of the way, and don't touch anything. Nothing at all. We need this job, Anna." Anna would nod and find her usual spot in the corner behind some chairs, where she could see everything but no one could see her. She brought a book or some homework, but mostly she just watched and listened. Rosa would start her work before sunrise, mopping floors and wiping down every surface until it gleamed. She cleaned the bathrooms, emptied trash cans, and made sure every seat in the audience was perfect. Rosa took pride in her work, even though it was hard and the pay wasn't much. Around 7 in the morning, the musicians would start arriving for their practice sessions. This was Anna's favorite part of the day. She would sit perfectly still and listen as they warmed up their instruments and practiced the same pieces over and over again. First came the violinists, tuning their instruments with those high, sweet sounds that made Anna's heart flutter. Then the cellists with their deep, rich tones that she could feel in her chest. Sometimes there were flute players whose music sounded like birds singing, or trumpet players who could make the whole hall ring with bright, bold notes. But the piano was different. When someone sat down at that beautiful black piano, Anna forgot about everything else. She forgot about being hungry because they hadn't eaten breakfast. She forgot about being tired from waking up so early. She even forgot about being careful not to make any noise. Over the months and years, Anna began to recognize the pieces the pianists played. There was one that sounded like raindrops falling on a window, another that made her think of a sad story with a happy ending. Her favorite was a piece that started soft and gentle, like someone whispering a secret, then grew bigger and more exciting until it felt like her heart might burst. Anna didn't know the names of these pieces, but she knew every note. She had heard them so many times that she could hum along perfectly in her head. Sometimes, when no one was looking, she would move her fingers on her leg, pretending she was playing along. The musicians who came to practice were all different, but they had one thing in common. They all looked like they belonged there. They wore nice clothes and carried expensive instrument cases. They spoke to each other about music schools and concerts and places Anna had never been. They lived in a world that felt as far away from her apartment as the moon. Anna's mother worked hard to keep them both fed and housed, but there was never any extra money. Rosa worked this cleaning job in the morning, then went to her afternoon job at a restaurant downtown. In the evenings, she was too tired to do much except make dinner and help Anna with homework before they both fell into bed, exhausted. Music lessons were something Anna had never even thought to ask for. She knew they cost money her mother didn't have. Besides, the piano at the music hall was the only one she had ever seen up close. In their neighborhood, there weren't music stores or fancy instruments. There were just the sounds of traffic and sirens and people shouting. But sitting in that corner every morning, Anna felt like she was getting a secret education. She learned that some music was fast and playful, while other pieces were slow and thoughtful. She discovered that the same song could sound completely different depending on who played it and how they felt that day. She noticed that when pianists were sad, their music was sad too, even if they were playing a happy song. When they were excited, their fingers danced across the keys like they were celebrating. Music, Anna realized, was like a language that spoke directly to people's hearts. Sometimes the musicians would make mistakes, hitting the wrong keys or losing their place in the music. Anna always knew when this happened because she had memorized every piece so well. She would wince a little when they played a wrong note, but she never made a sound. One pianist, an older woman with gray hair, came to practice every Tuesday morning. She played the same beautiful piece every week, the one that sounded like a whispered secret. Anna loved listening to her because she played with so much feeling that it made Anna want to cry happy tears. Another regular was a young man who always wore a blue sweater. He played music that was fast and complicated, with his fingers flying across the keys so quickly that Anna could barely follow them. But somehow, she always could. In her mind, she played along with him, note for note. Anna never spoke to any of these musicians. Her mother had made it clear that they were there to work, not to bother the artists. But Anna felt like she knew them anyway. She knew their favorite pieces, their struggles with difficult passages, and the way their faces lit up when they played. Something perfectly. As the months turned into years, Anna began to feel like the piano was calling to her. When the hall was empty and quiet, she would stare at those black and white keys and imagine what it would feel like to press them. Would they be smooth or rough? Would they feel warm or cool under her fingers? What would it sound like to hear her own music coming from that magnificent instrument instead of just listening to everyone else's? But she never moved from her corner. She never broke her mother's rules. She was a good daughter who understood that this job was important for their survival. The music hall was the one beautiful thing in their difficult life, and Anna wasn't going to do anything to risk losing it. Still, as she sat there morning after morning, something was growing inside her. It was more than just love for the music, she heard. It was a deep, powerful feeling that she belonged at that piano, that her hands were meant to touch those keys, that she had her own music waiting to come out. Anna didn't know it yet, but that feeling was about to change everything. It was a Tuesday morning in November when everything changed. Anna woke up to the sound of rain hitting their apartment window. The weather had turned cold overnight, and she could see her breath in the chilly air as she got dressed in the dark. Rosa moved more slowly than usual that morning. She had been fighting a cold for 3 days but couldn't afford to miss work. She coughed as she put on her cleaning uniform, trying to muffle the sound so she wouldn't wake the neighbors. "Are you okay, Mom?" Anna whispered, watching her mother struggle to tie her shoes. "I'm fine, sweetheart." "Just a little tired," Rosa replied, but Anna could hear the exhaustion in her voice. They walked to the music hall through the rain, Rosa leaning heavily on Anna's small shoulder. When they arrived, Rosa had to sit down for a moment to catch her breath. Her face was pale and she was shivering despite wearing her warmest coat. Anna helped her mother get started with the morning cleaning routine. She carried the heavy bucket of water while Rosa mopped the floors. She emptied trash cans and wiped down the seats in the audience area. They worked together in comfortable silence, the way they had done hundreds of times before. Around 8 o'clock, Rosa was cleaning the backstage area when one of the old pipes in the basement started leaking. Water was dripping through the ceiling of the storage room where they kept expensive music equipment. This was an emergency that couldn't wait. "Anna, I need you to stay here while I go downstairs to fix this," Rosa said, grabbing her toolbox. "It might take a while. Just sit in your usual spot and don't move, okay? I'll be back as soon as I can." Anna nodded and watched her mother disappear down the narrow stairs that led to the basement. For the first time in 3 years, she was completely alone in the music hall. The silence felt different when she was by herself. Usually there were the sounds of her mother working, footsteps echoing through the halls, or the distant noise of musicians arriving for practice. But now it was just Anna and the empty building. She sat in her corner behind the chairs trying to read a book she had brought, but her eyes kept drifting to the piano on the stage. It looked even more magnificent in the morning light streaming through the tall windows. The black surface gleamed like a mirror, and the white keys seemed to glow. Anna had never been alone with the piano before. Every day for 3 years she had watched other people play it while she stayed hidden in her corner. She had memorized dozens of songs just by listening. She knew exactly how each piece should sound, which keys to press, when to play softly, and when to play with power. But she had never touched those keys herself. A strange feeling began growing in her chest, like a bird trying to escape from a cage. Her hands started to tingle, and she found herself standing up without really deciding to do it. Her feet carried her toward the stage, step by step, as if they had a mind of their own. The stage felt enormous under her small sneakers. Up close, the piano was even more beautiful than she had imagined. The wood was smooth and perfect without a single scratch or mark. The keys were perfectly aligned, each one exactly the same size and height. Anna looked around the empty hall one more time. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Don't touch anything, nothing at all, we need this job." But Rosa was downstairs fixing the leak, and there was no one else around. The musicians wouldn't arrive for another hour. Her right hand reached out slowly, trembling like a leaf in the wind. Her index finger hovered over middle C, the key she had watched thousands of pianists press first when they sat down to play. She knew it was middle C because the old woman in the gray hair had taught her granddaughter about it during one of their visits. Anna pressed the key. The sound that came out was pure and clear, echoing through the empty hall like a church bell. It was the most beautiful sound Anna had ever heard, not because the note itself was special, but because she was the one making it. She pressed another key, then another. Each note rang out perfect and true. Her left hand joined her right, and suddenly she was playing the melody that had been stuck in her head for months. It was the piece the old woman played every Tuesday, the one that sounded like someone whispering, a secret. Anna's fingers seemed to know exactly where to go. She had never had a piano lesson in her life, but 3 years of watching and listening had taught her more than she realized. Her hands found the right keys without her having to think about it. The music flowed out of her fingertips like water, from a spring. She played the gentle, whispering piece all the way through without making a single mistake. When it ended, the silence that followed felt full of magic. Anna stared at her hands in amazement. Had that really been her playing? Feeling braver now, she started the fast, complicated piece that the young man in the blue sweater always practiced. Her fingers danced across the keys, moving faster and faster as the music built to its exciting climax. This piece had always seemed impossible when she watched others play it, but somehow her hands knew every note. Then something even more amazing happened. Anna started playing music that wasn't from memory. New melodies began flowing from her fingers, pieces she had never heard before. It was as if all the music she had absorbed over the years was mixing together inside her, creating something completely new. She played music that sounded like the rain outside, with gentle notes that pattered like droplets on a roof. She played music that felt like her mother's hugs, warm and safe and full of love. She played music that captured the feeling of watching the sunrise through the music hall windows, hopeful and bright and full of possibilities. Anna lost track of time completely. She forgot about her mother working in the basement. She forgot about the rules and the warnings and the fear of getting in trouble. All that existed was the music and the magical feeling of the keys under her fingers. The piano seemed to sing with joy at finally being played by someone who understood its voice so completely. Every note was exactly right, every phrase perfectly shaped. Anna wasn't just playing the piano. She was having a conversation with it, and it was answering back with the most beautiful sounds she had ever heard. She played piece after piece, some from memory, and others that seemed to create themselves. Her small hands moved across the keys, with confidence and grace, as if she had been playing all her life. The music filled every corner of the hall, bouncing off the walls and ceiling, creating a symphony of echoes that made everything sound even more magnificent. Anna felt like she was flying. For the first time in her life, she wasn't watching from the corner or hiding in the shadows. She was the one making the music, the one bringing beauty into the world. This was what she was meant to do. This was who she was meant to be. She was so lost in the joy of playing that she didn't hear the footsteps in the hallway. She didn't notice the figure who had stopped just outside the entrance to the hall, listening in amazement to the incredible music coming from inside. Anna kept playing, unaware that her secret was about to be discovered, and that her life was about to change forever. Dr. Catherine Chen had been the music director of the Grand Concert Hall for 15 years. She had heard thousands of performances, worked with world-famous musicians, and thought she had experienced every type of musical talent imaginable. But nothing had prepared her for what she heard that Tuesday morning. She had arrived early to prepare for an important meeting with 3 visiting artists from the International Music Foundation. These weren't just any musicians. They were legends in their field, people whose names appeared on concert posters around the world. The meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock, but Catherine always liked to arrive at least an hour early to review her notes and make sure everything was perfect. As she walked up the front steps of the music hall, she could hear piano music coming from inside. This wasn't unusual. Musicians often arrived early to practice, and Catherine had given several artists keys to the building so they could come and go as needed. But something about this music made her stop and listen more carefully. It was beautiful, yes, but there was something else. Something raw and emotional that she rarely heard from professional performers. The playing had a quality that reminded her why she had fallen in love with music in the first place. Many years ago, Catherine quietly opened the front door and stepped inside. The music was coming from the main hall, floating through the air like something magical. She recognized the piece. It was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, one of the most beautiful and challenging pieces ever written for piano. But this wasn't the careful, precise version she usually heard from classically trained musicians. This performance had soul. It had the kind of deep feeling that couldn't be taught in any music school. Whoever was playing understood the heart of the music in a way that took most artists years to develop. Catherine walked quietly toward the main hall, expecting to see one of the visiting artists warming up for their meeting. Perhaps it was Vladimir, the famous Russian pianist, or maybe Chen Wei, the young prodigy from Taiwan who had won every major competition in the past 5 years. She pushed open the door to the hall and stopped dead in her tracks. Sitting at the magnificent Steinway grand piano was a small girl who couldn't have been more than 12 years old. She was wearing faded jeans and a hoodie that looked like it had seen better days. Her sneakers didn't even touch the floor as she sat on the piano bench. But none of that mattered because the music coming from her small hands was absolutely extraordinary. Catherine stood frozen in the doorway, afraid to move or make any noise that might break the spell. The girl was completely lost in the music, her eyes closed, her whole body swaying gently with the rhythm. Her fingers moved across the keys with the kind of natural grace that Catherine had only seen in a handful of musicians in her entire career. The girl finished the Chopin piece and immediately began playing something else. Catherine recognized it as a piece by Debussy, another incredibly difficult composition that most students struggled with for months before they could play it properly. But this child was playing it as if she had been born knowing every note. What amazed Catherine even more was the emotion in the playing. Professional musicians often focus so much on technical perfection that they forgot about the feelings behind the music. But this girl was pouring her heart into every note. You could hear joy and sadness, and hope and longing all mixed together in the most beautiful way. Catherine pulled out her phone and quickly sent 3 text messages. Within minutes, she received responses confirming that all 3 visiting artists were on their way to the hall immediately. She knew they had to witness this for themselves. The first to arrive was Vladimir Petrov, a 60-year-old Russian pianist who had been performing since he was younger than the girl at the piano. He was known for his serious expression and his incredible technique, but when he heard the music coming from the hall, his stern face softened with wonder. "Who is this?" he whispered to Catherine as they stood together at the back of the hall. "I have no idea," Catherine whispered back. "I found her here when I arrived this morning." Vladimir listened carefully as the girl transitioned into yet another piece. This one a complex composition by Bach that required both hands to play completely different melodies at the same time. Most pianists needed years of training to master this kind of coordination, but this child was playing it flawlessly. "This is impossible," Vladimir murmured. "Where did she study? Who is her teacher?" Before Catherine could answer, Chen Wei arrived. The 25-year-old pianist from Taiwan was considered one of the most gifted musicians of his generation. He had started playing piano at age 3 and had been performing professionally since he was 8 years old. But even he looked stunned as he listened to the mysterious girl. "Her technique is unrefined," Chen Wei whispered, "but her musicality is incredible. She understands the soul of these pieces better than pianists twice her age." The third visitor arrived just as the girl began playing something none of them recognized. It wasn't a famous classical piece or a well-known composition. It sounded like she was creating it on the spot, improvising a melody that seemed to come straight from her heart. Jazz legend Robert "Bobby" Washington had played with the greatest musicians of the past 40 years. He had performed in tiny clubs and massive concert halls, had jammed with rock stars and collaborated with symphony orchestras. Bobby thought he had heard every possible style and approach to music, but this young girl was showing him something completely new. "She's not just playing music," Bobby whispered to the others. "She's speaking it like a native language, like she was born knowing it." The three musicians stood transfixed as the girl's improvised composition grew more complex and beautiful. She seemed to be telling a story with the music, painting pictures with sound. Her small hands moved across the keys with increasing confidence, and the melody she created was so beautiful that Catherine felt tears forming in her eyes. The girl played for nearly 20 minutes, moving seamlessly from one piece to another, mixing classical compositions with her own original creations. Every note was perfect, every phrase carefully shaped, every emotion clearly expressed. It was the kind of performance that professional musicians spent their entire careers trying to achieve. Finally, the music came to a gentle, quiet ending. The girl sat still for a moment, her hands resting on the keys, as if she was saying goodbye to the piano after a wonderful conversation. The silence that followed was profound. Catherine and the three visiting artists stood in the back of the hall, trying to process what they had just witnessed. They had all dedicated their lives to music, had studied and practiced and performed for decades, but none of them had ever heard anything quite like this. "We have to talk to her," Catherine finally whispered. "We have to find out who she is and how she learned to play like that." Vladimir nodded slowly. "In all my years of performing, I have rarely heard such natural musicality. This child has a gift that cannot be taught." Chen Wei was shaking his head in amazement. "She's completely self-taught, isn't she? I can tell by the way she holds her hands and sits at the piano. But somehow she's developed an understanding of music that most conservatory graduates never achieve." Bobby was grinning from ear to ear. "That girl has something special, something you can't learn in school or get from books. She's got the music living inside her soul." As they watched, the girl slowly stood up from the piano bench and turned around. For the first time they could see her face clearly. She looked tired and a little thin, but her eyes were bright with the joy of having played the music she loved. That's when they heard footsteps coming from somewhere else in the building, and a woman's voice calling out in panic. "Anna! Anna! Where are you?" Rosa's voice echoed through the music hall, filled with panic and fear. She had finished fixing the leak in the basement and returned to find Anna's corner empty. Her heart was racing as she searched through the building, imagining all the terrible things that could have happened to her daughter. Anna heard her mother's voice and felt her stomach drop. She was still standing next to the piano, her hands trembling as the reality of what she had done crashed down on her. She had broken the most important rule. She had touched the piano. She had played it for almost an hour. "I'm here, Mom," Anna called out, her voice small and scared. Rosa burst through the doors of the main hall, her face pale with worry. When she saw Anna standing on the stage next to the piano, her expression changed from relief to horror. "What are you doing up there?" Rosa rushed toward the stage, not noticing the four adults standing quietly at the back of the hall. "Anna, please tell me you didn't touch that piano." Anna looked down at her feet, unable to meet her mother's eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know. I wasn't supposed to, but nothing. Rosa's voice cracked with emotion. Do you understand what you've done? If they find out, I'll lose my job. We'll lose everything. Rosa climbed onto the stage and grabbed Anna's hand, pulling her away from the piano as if it might bite her. Her hands were shaking as she checked the instrument for any signs of damage, running her fingers over the keys to make sure nothing was broken. Did anyone see you? Please tell me no one was here, Rosa whispered desperately. That's when Dr. Chen stepped forward from the back of the hall, clearing her throat gently. Mrs. Santos, I presume? Rosa spun around, her face going white when she saw the four well-dressed strangers watching them. She recognized Dr. Chen from the time she had seen her around the building, but she didn't know who the other three people were. They looked important and expensive, exactly the kind of people Rosa tried to avoid while she worked. Dr. Chen, I'm so sorry, Rosa stammered, still holding Anna's hand tightly. My daughter. She's never done anything like this before. Please, I can explain. She was just curious, and I was downstairs fixing the leak, and… Mrs. Santos, please calm down, Dr. Chen said gently, walking slowly toward the stage. Your daughter isn't in trouble. None of us are angry with her. Rosa looked confused and suspicious. In her experience, when rich people said they weren't angry, it usually meant they were planning something worse than anger. I don't understand, Rosa said. She touched the piano. She broke the rules. I know how expensive that instrument is. Vladimir stepped forward, his thick Russian accent making his words sound even more serious than usual. Madam, your daughter did not harm the piano. In fact, she made it sing more beautifully than I have heard in many years. Rosa stared at him, blankly, not understanding what he meant. Sing? She doesn't know how to play piano. We can't afford lessons. She's never had any training. Chen Wei joined the conversation, his voice filled with excitement. Mrs. Santos, we've been listening to your daughter play for the past 20 minutes. What we heard was extraordinary. She has a natural talent that is incredibly rare. Bobby nodded enthusiastically. That little girl has got music in her soul. The way she plays, it's like she was born knowing how to make those keys dance. Rosa looked back and forth between the four adults, then down at Anna, who was still staring at her feet. Nothing they were saying made sense. Anna couldn't play piano. She had never taken a lesson in her life. She barely knew what a piano was, except for watching other people play it. I think there's been some mistake, Rosa said carefully. Anna can't play piano. She's never even touched one before today. Mom, Anna said quietly, finally looking up. I can play. I've been listening and learning for 3 years. I know all the songs by heart. Rosa's eyes widened. What do you mean you know the songs? The lady with gray hair who comes on Tuesdays. She plays the piece that sounds like raindrops. The young man in the blue sweater plays the fast one that sounds like running. I know them all, Mom. I've been watching and listening to everyone who practices here. Dr. Chen felt her heart breaking as she began to understand the situation. This child had been coming to the music hall for years, sitting quietly in the corner while her mother worked, absorbing everything she heard. Without any formal training, without anyone teaching her, she had somehow learned to play by pure observation and natural instinct. Mrs. Santos, Dr. Chen said gently, would it be possible for Anna to play something for us? Just so you can hear what we heard. Rosa shook her head quickly. Oh no, I couldn't ask her to do that. These people are important, and Anna, she's just a little girl who doesn't know any better. Please, Mom. Anna looked up at her mother with hopeful eyes. I promise I can really play. I won't embarrass you. Vladimir crouched down so he was at Anna's eye level. Little one, would you like to show your mother the beautiful music you were making? We would all love to hear it again. Anna looked back and forth between her mother and the kind stranger. Rosa saw something in her daughter's eyes that she had never seen before. It was confidence mixed with joy, like Anna had found something she had been searching for her whole life. Okay, Rosa said slowly. But just one song. And if you can't really play, we're leaving right away. Anna's face lit up with the biggest smile Rosa had ever seen. She walked back to the piano bench and sat down, her small legs barely reaching the pedals. She placed her hands on the keys and took a deep breath. Then she began to play. The music that came from the piano was so beautiful that Rosa had to sit down in one of the nearby chairs. This was her daughter, her little Anna, who had never had a music lesson, playing like she had been studying for years. The melody was sweet and sad and hopeful all at the same time, and Rosa could hear emotions in it that she didn't even know Anna understood. Tears started rolling down Rosa's cheeks as she listened. She had worked so hard to give Anna a good life, but she had never been able to afford extras like music lessons or instruments. She had always felt guilty about the things she couldn't provide for her daughter, but somehow Anna had found the music anyway. She had taken the small opportunities Rosa's job provided and turned them into something miraculous. When Anna finished playing, the hall was completely silent except for the sound of Rosa crying. She walked up to the piano and hugged her daughter tightly. "I had no idea," Rosa whispered. "Anna, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Anna hugged her mother back, feeling happier than she had ever felt in her life. "I learned it from listening, Mom. All those mornings when we came here early, I was learning." Dr. Chen approached them carefully, not wanting to interrupt the moment between mother and daughter. "Mrs. Santos, we would like to talk to you about Anna's future. What we heard today. This is the kind of talent that comes along once in a generation." Rosa looked up, still holding Anna close. "What do you mean?" "We mean," Vladimir said with a gentle smile, "that your daughter has a gift that should be shared with the world." 6 months later, Anna stood backstage at the Grand Concert Hall wearing a beautiful white dress that Dr. Chen had helped Rosa pick out. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. She was excited. Tonight was her first official recital, and the hall was completely sold out. The changes in Anna's life had happened so quickly that sometimes she felt like she was living in a dream. That Tuesday morning when she had been discovered at the piano seemed like it had happened yesterday and a lifetime ago at the same time. After Dr. Chen and the 3 visiting musicians had talked to Rosa that day, everything had changed. Vladimir had offered to become Anna's teacher, something he had never done for a student outside his prestigious music academy in New York. Chen Wei had volunteered to help her with performance techniques and stage presence. Bobby had promised to teach her about different styles of music, from jazz to blues to contemporary pieces. But the most amazing thing was what had happened to Rosa's job. Instead of being fired for letting Anna touch the piano, Rosa had been promoted to head of building services. Dr. Chen had explained that Rosa's dedication to her work, combined with the incredible discovery of Anna's talent, showed the kind of special qualities they valued at the music hall. The promotion came with a much better salary, health insurance, and a small apartment right above the music hall where Rosa and Anna could live rent-free. For the first time in years, Rosa didn't have to work 2 jobs just to pay the bills. The International Music Foundation had also stepped in to help. They had provided a scholarship that covered all of Anna's music lessons, plus money for books, clothes, and anything else she needed for her education. They had even arranged for a small piano to be placed in the apartment upstairs, so Anna could practice whenever she wanted. Anna's story had spread quickly through the music world. A local newspaper had written an article about her discovery, titled, "The Hidden Talent Found in the Corner." The story had been picked up by larger newspapers, then by television stations, and eventually by music magazines around the world. People were fascinated by the idea of a young girl who had learned to play piano just by listening, sitting quietly in the corner while her mother worked. Musicians and music teachers everywhere were amazed by what Anna had accomplished without any formal training. But Anna tried not to think too much about all the attention. She was more focused on learning everything she could from her new teachers. Vladimir was strict but kind, helping her improve her technique while encouraging her natural musicality. Chen Wei taught her how to perform in front of audiences without getting nervous. Bobby showed her how music could tell stories and express emotions in ways that words never could. Anna's favorite part of her new life was still the early morning hours at the music hall. Rosa still came in early to do her job, but now Anna came. With her by choice, not because there was nowhere else to go. She would practice on the same piano where she had been discovered, and sometimes other musicians would stop to listen and offer advice. The young man who wore the blue sweater had introduced himself as David, and he had become one of Anna's biggest supporters. The older woman with gray hair was named Helen, and she had started bringing her granddaughter to meet Anna and learn from her enthusiasm for music. Anna had also started composing her own pieces. The music that had flowed from her fingers that first morning hadn't been a one-time thing. She discovered that she could create melodies and harmonies that no one had ever heard before. Vladimir said her compositions showed a maturity and emotional depth that was remarkable for someone so young. Tonight's recital would feature 3 pieces that Anna had composed herself, along with classical works by Chopin, Debussy, and Bach. The program also included a special piece that Bobby had helped her arrange, combining classical piano with jazz influences in a way that no one had ever tried before. Dr. Chen peeked backstage to check on Anna before the performance began. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "I'm ready," Anna said with a smile. A little nervous, but mostly excited. "Your mother is in the front row, and she looks so proud," Dr. Chen said. "Vladimir, Chenwei, and Bobby are all here too, plus about 500 other people who can't wait to hear you play," Anna nodded. She had gotten used to performing in front of small groups over the past few months, but this was her first time playing for such a large audience. The tickets had sold out within hours of going on sale, with people traveling from other cities just to hear the girl who had taught herself to play piano. "Remember what we practiced," Dr. Chen said gently. "Don't worry about playing perfectly. Just let the music flow the way it did that first morning. That's what people want to hear." Anna took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The audience applauded warmly as she sat down at the piano bench. She looked out at all the faces in the crowd and saw Rosa in the front row, tears already streaming down her cheeks. Anna placed her hands on the keys and began to play her first composition, the piece she had created that morning when she was alone with the piano. The melody started softly, like someone whispering a secret, then grew stronger and more confident as it progressed. As she played, Anna remembered all the mornings she had sat in the corner, watching and listening and dreaming. She thought about her mother working 2 jobs to keep them fed and housed. She thought about the kindness of strangers who had seen something special in her and decided to help. The music that came from her fingers told the story of her journey. It spoke of loneliness and hope, of dreams that seemed impossible and the courage to reach for them anyway. It expressed the love between a mother and daughter, and the magic that happens when talent meets opportunity. When she finished the first piece, the audience was completely silent for a moment before erupting in thunderous applause. Anna smiled and began her second piece, a classical composition by Chopin that she had learned to play even better than the pianist who had originally taught it to her through his morning practice sessions. One by one, Anna played through her entire program. Each piece was met with greater enthusiasm from the audience, but the most special moment came when she played her final composition, a piece she had written for her mother called Morning Light. The melody captured the feeling of those early morning walks to the music hall, when the city was still quiet and the only sound was their footsteps on the empty sidewalks. It expressed the gratitude Anna felt for her mother's sacrifices and the joy of discovering that those difficult mornings had led to the most beautiful opportunity of her life. When the last note faded away, the entire audience stood up and applauded for several minutes. Anna stood and curtsied the way Chenwei had taught her, then looked out at the crowd with tears of happiness in her eyes. Rosa rushed onto the stage and hugged her daughter tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Not just because you play beautifully, but because you never gave up on your dreams." As Anna looked out at the audience, she saw Vladimir wiping tears from his eyes, Chenwei grinning with pride, and Bobby giving her a thumbs up. Dr. Chen was standing in the wings, smiling like she had just witnessed a miracle. Later that evening, a reporter asked Anna what advice she would give to other children who had big dreams but didn't think they were possible. Anna thought for a moment, then said, Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places. You never know what might happen if you pay attention and keep hoping. And don't forget to thank the people who help you along the way. Today, Anna continues to perform around the world, sharing her gift with audiences everywhere. But she never forgot where it all started, in a corner of a concert hall, with a mother who loved her enough to bring her along to work every morning. The piano that started it all still sits in the grand concert hall, now with a small plaque that reads, "Music, lives everywhere waiting to be discovered."